Welcome to the You're Not Crazy podcast, hosted by Jessica Knight, a certified life coach who specializes in healing from narcissistic and emotional abuse. This podcast is intended to help you identify manipulative and abusive behavior, set boundaries with yourself and others, and heal the relationship with yourself so you can learn to love in a healthy way. You can connect with Jessica and find additional resources, content, and coaching at emotionalabusecoach.com.
Hello, and thank you for being here. Before we dive in, I want to go through the fine print and share how we can work together. Because healing from this kind of pain takes a lot more than time. It takes the right kind of support. I work with people entangling themselves from emotionally abusive relationships, coercive control, trauma bonds, high conflict co-parenting dynamics, high conflict divorce, and if you're at the beginning of the road and wondering what divorce would look like. I offer one-on-one coaching at every stage. If you're still in the relationship, if you're unsure if it's abuse, if you know it's abuse but you're having trouble understanding what that looks like, or what to do with it, I can help you name what's happening, start setting boundaries that work for you, and figure out what you need. If you're thinking about leaving, we'll explore what that might look like in a grounded and personalized way. If you're navigating divorce or custody or co-parenting with a high conflict person, I can help you document, strategize, and stay emotionally anchored, especially when you're being gaslit, discredited, and re-traumatized by the legal system. If you've already left and you're stuck in the trauma bond, or if you've been discarded and struggling to feel like yourself again, I can help you rebuild self-trust and reconnect with your own nervous system in a way that actually feels doable. Everything I do is highly personalized. I don't walk you through a one-size-fits-all program. I listen, I reflect, and I guide you based on what you're facing right now. And some people work with me through a one-time validation call, which is offered on my website, where we zero in on one issue you're struggling with and start to untangle it together. Others work with me on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, depending on what's going on in your specific situation. And this is especially helpful when healing from emotional abuse and also in divorce. If you're curious about starting, I offer a $25 intro call, which if you listen to my older episodes, I call it a clarity call. It did used to be free, and I talk about it at a later episode, but really a lot of people were no-showing to those calls, and that was taking away time from clients that I do work one-on-one with. And so if we move forward, I just take that fee and apply it to your first session. That intro call is just for us to get on the same page so you can share what's going on for you and I can share how I might be able to help. I only take a limited number of those calls per month because one-on-one coaching is the core of my work. Out of all these offerings that I have, one-on-one coaching is the thing that I do the most, and I do it 6 days a week most of the time, 5 to 6 days a week. And so if my calendar looks full and if there's not a time that you can get in, you can email me at jessicaknightcoaching.com, and I always try and make space where I can. And I may also always have a few openings from one-on-one client reschedules. You can also explore self-paced courses and toolkits at jessicaknight.thinkific.com, including Divorcing a Narcissist 101 and the Emotional Abuse Breakthrough course. I have a documentation course and my new signature program, Unhooked, which is a private podcast and course that walks you through the full cycle of abuse, helps you map it in your relationship and how to break it and how to begin to see what it really is that you're going through. If you want ongoing support in a more flexible way, you could always check out my Substack at jessicaknight.substack.com. Each month I focus on a different theme, from trauma bonding to divorce to cluster B to sexual coercion to emotional abuse to toxic breakups. Those are just some from this year. Paid members get access to monthly deep dives, master classes, Q&As, strategy kits, and I'm working on some more group options. There is also a free option and a monthly option. So please head over to Substack. The link is in my show notes. You also can just search Jessica Knight Coaching and I'll come up. Everything that I create is meant to help. My coaching, my writing, my courses, this podcast, it's built around the one truth that you're not crazy. You are conditioned to doubt your reality, and I want to help you change that and understand what you're going through. If you like this podcast, the best thing that you can do is subscribe and rate the episode 5 stars. You can find me on my websites, emotionalabusecoach.com and high-conflict divorcecoaching.com. All of the offerings that I just mentioned are also in the show notes below. Now let's get to the episode.
I used to think that clarity was the answer, that if I could just understand why he acted the way he did, why he lied or manipulated or was so hot and cold, that I can finally feel peace or find peace, and that maybe it would explain the behavior that kept me teetering between staying and leaving all the time. And I spent so long asking myself these questions I would never get answers to. Like, why did he do this? Why couldn't he see how much he was hurting me? Why wasn't I enough? And clarity from somebody who's disordered, somebody who's abusive, doesn't really exist. Not in the way that you wanted to. There really is no amount of understanding that will get the abuse to stop. People who manipulate and exploit others thrive in ambiguity. They'll twist the narrative, rewrite history, and leave you chasing explanations that really rarely ever come. And if you think about it, it's actually part of the way that they maintain control. It's part of the cycle of abuse, because if you're always wondering, waiting, thinking, waiting for the apology, then you hold on because there's a next step, another time when things might make sense. And if you've waited so long, you're probably like, okay, I'll just wait till that thing makes sense. This is a predictable pattern. This is why I mentioned the cycle of abuse, because it's a predictable pattern that keeps you locked in. And it doesn't start with abuse. It starts with tension. This is something I talk about a lot. You can feel like something's off, or maybe they're more distant, or maybe you're walking on eggshells, but you begin adjusting yourself to keep the peace. And then after the incident, it's the outburst, the control, the criticism, the emotional withdrawal, the rage. It doesn't have to be physical. But it is a moment where the mask starts to slip. And what follows is often reconciliation. So they'll apologize, or sort of apologize. There'll be excuses. There might be promises to change. They might blame the stress or an incident or work. Sometimes they'll even show emotions too, like they'll cry. And you want to believe it because you kind of need to believe it. Like, that's the part of you that's holding on to the version of them who once made you feel safe. And you feel desperate to make sense of the chaos. But then the calm comes and things start to feel okay again until tension starts to build again. And this is how the cycle of abuse traps you. The shifts between tenderness and cruelty confuse your nervous system and distort your sense of reality. You keep waiting for the version of them who once seemed loving. And you think if you just say or do the right thing, you can get that back. And when you're busy analyzing their motives, you're not focused on their behavior, you're not holding them accountable. You're caught in a loop of trying to make sense of the senseless. And they seem a lot of times to move on without any hesitation. It's so disorienting because you wonder, how could they just be acting normal when like this big thing happened 5 minutes ago? And that confusion is really destabilizing because we're wired to look for meaning. And we want to believe there's logic behind their behavior, even when it's harmful. But when someone's actions don't align with what we believe love and respect to look like, we start rewriting the story and we make excuses. So we'll say maybe they're scared, maybe it's unresolved trauma, or they don't realize the harm they're causing, or they're broken and just need the right kind of love to heal. They're traumatized. And that line of thinking cost me so much time, so much self-worth, and so much of my own peace. That's exactly how trauma bonds are formed. You feel hurt, but you've also been conditioned to associate that hurt with love. You believe that if you can just understand them better, you finally earn the love you were promised, that belief that keeps you attached even as your nervous system begs for some relief, which is usually why you give in. And I just want to validate something because I think it's important that sometimes we do need to understand what's happening, not to excuse their behavior, but to reclaim our own reality. When you've been gaslit, manipulated, or made to question your instincts, recognizing emotional abuse is the first step towards like really getting to the truth, and naming it and seeing it clearly allows you to separate their choices from your value. So all that time that we spend trying to understand them, it's certainly a part of healing. But I think it gets to a point where understanding what happened won't change their choices, but it might change the way that you see yourself. And you won't take it as personal. And that is the beginning of the shift of everything. This is actually the work that I do in my emotional abuse breakthrough course. So if you are curious about that course, the link is in my show notes. I have that course as a way for you to understand what's going on in your relationship, be able to validate for yourself that it's abuse. And we have a section on boundaries so you can begin to untangle yourself. Because at one point, there's no explanation for somebody's behavior. Sometimes people act selfishly and cruelly and controlling. They benefit from it. They have learned that the world allows them to keep getting away with it. They have figured out a way to run away from their shame. Their reasons, if they even exist, are not your responsibility to uncover. Or even if you do get the clarity that you're searching for, it's not going to undo the damage or the trauma, because I've never seen somebody go back and heal all the wounds with the person. Usually they are very, very much just ready to blame. Knowing why they mistreated you won't make you feel more safe. It doesn't rewrite the moments you begged for or basic decency, and it won't lead them to finally see that you're worthy of love. And in a way, it won't get him to see that like you were focused on love and you have a healthy version of love and you aren't controlling. And sometimes letting go of that search for clarity can feel so terrifying. And for me, it felt like surrendering control. I kept telling myself, if I didn't understand it, how could I ever protect myself from it? How do I know it won't happen again? And I think that fear makes sense, but clarity about somebody else's dysfunction is not what ends up keeping you safe. Your boundaries do. Your self-respect does. Choosing to walk away from people who hurt you, regardless of their intent, is what protects you. And the most transformative shift I ever made was that I stopped asking myself, why did he do this? Or how did he do that? Or how could he think that? And I started asking myself, what am I willing to tolerate moving forward? And that question turned my attention away from understanding him and toward understanding myself. And I really stopped analyzing his actions and started building a life where his behavior no longer mattered, because what became really important was listening to my instinct, which felt really silenced for a long time. And clarity also came from recognizing that his choices were intentional, whether or not he would admit that they were intentional, because he made them over and over again, no matter how kind, patient, loving, or forgiving I was. The number of apologies that I got didn't matter because his actions never changed. Clarity for me was also about accepting that his confusion wasn't mine to resolve. His pain is not mine to heal. Like, we all are responsible for our own wounds. His inability to see me as a person was not proof that it didn't exist, that I didn't exist. And I think that's how trauma bonds begin to break, when you just stop forcing, when you stop focusing on them and you start focusing on you. Their chaos no longer defines your peace. Letting go of the why is really painful. It requires grieving the possibility of ever understanding them, of ever having change. It's also the freedom that follows, though, because freedom to stop carrying the burden of someone else's dysfunction is the thing that allows you to get back to yourself. And if you are listening to this and you feel stuck and you're asking yourself, why did he do this? I just really want to invite you to ask or journal on these questions. Why am I tolerating someone who makes me feel this way? What does make me feel safe, respected, or at peace? How can I build a life where his actions don't control me? if this relationship is already over, or if it's just in the hoovering stage or the discard and you're waiting for it to come back, you don't need clarity about him or from him to heal. You just need that clarity for yourself. And if you need support, because I know how hard this is, I really do know how hard this is, you can always reach out to me at emotionalabusecoach.com, and all of my offerings, including my private podcast on the cycle of abuse and mapping out your specific cycle of abuse, are in the show notes. I really, really hope that this was helpful.